Hello and welcome to day 61 of 73. And today I wanted to talk about the hardest sell. Now, I know a lot of people are familiar with the whole trope of Indiana Jones where the scene is set, he's in this temple, he's trying to get the gem or the treasure or the jewel, but it is on a trip where if he were to remove it without replacing it with something of an equal weight, then the whole thing collapses and that's the end of the hero's story. Now, why I thought about that particular example is because I think it is not very honest of me in telling you that a lot of the change and a lot of the efforts that one goes about bringing in their own lives is only tied to having a clear understanding or vision about who exactly you would want to be, because that wouldn't be the full part of the story. What I think and why I think this journey is in alignment with that particular analogy that I gave with Indiana Jones is because for a while I was under the impression that me choosing to change the person that I was a simple linear path in the sense that I knew who I now wanted to be and who I no longer wanted to be. And it was a case of being able to take those incremental steps towards that point. But what I figured out is that when you're actually doing that work, there is a part or a very important responsibility for you to now be able to shift so quickly that you have something that's going to replace that void. What do I mean by that? When I quit drinking, I never realized how much of a part of me or my lifestyle it was, whether it was from a social aspect, whether it was from as a coping mechanism, or whether it was part of my identity, whatever it was. I now had to find something that could ultimately become that placeholder or become that thing that would now take or fill the void of something that was once so big in my life. And why I led with the hardest sell is that that particular change, and I've heard this being iterated in many different ways and examples from a psychological aspect to physiological. It is essentially a death of self. It is essentially now you having, in the process of becoming someone new, needing to say goodbye to yourself or to a past iteration of who you once were. And that part is very hard to be able to grasp because you're now in the realm of having to find something of equal value. Well, not even value, but something that would be strong enough to hold the place so that you don't regress or you don't go back to something that you now have worked so hard to leave or to improve in that sense. And I found that to be the case when I decided to start the journey. I started losing friends. I started not showing up in the same ways that I used to. I started now questioning whether this particular journey in and of itself was bringing the kind of value that I was hoping it was bringing. And given that, I don't want to always lead off or adopt the thinking that I am this particular example that many people would need to follow, because quite frankly, the journey in and of itself is probably the hardest thing that I've ever had to do. And I continue to choose it because I know that ultimately it is and should lead to something better. But walking towards that particular destination, it's not something that I can dress up and say is going to be all sunshine and roses and a walk in the park in that sense. It is an essential goodbye, and how comfortable you are with being able to have that conversation with yourself and follow through with the action is ultimately going to determine whether we get to that endpoint that you were envisioning or not. So it is the hardest sell, and do not get disheartened or discouraged when you do reach those obstacles, because again, it is about growth and it is about doing what is necessary in the moment to get past that hump. So yeah, Thank you for your time.